Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have swatches for you from the brand LynB Designs. I do have a good amount of things to share with you today. So I have their Polish of the Month for September, I have their LynB Loves Customs Polishes, and then I have a Halloween trio. So we have 8 shades to look at today. The Customs and the Halloween trio released on the 14th, and the Polish of the Month released on August 31st, so those are available right now already. In the description box below, I will link the LynB site, I will link their Instagram page, and I will link my Instagram page where you can see more swatches of everything from today's video. 2, if you use the code SPOOKY, you can receive half off your order, and it applies to today's polishes and a good amount of the things that are already in her shop. So we have 8 polishes to look at today, and let's go ahead and get started. So we're starting with their Polish of the Month. This is available right now. This is called Saturated Sapphire, and this is described as a royal blue base with a linear hollow and a sapphire galaxy hollow glitter. So here's our first coat of Saturated Sapphire. This has a really good formula. I didn't have any running or pooling or anything like that. It is a little bit sheer here on this first coat, so I am going to go in for a second coat. But as far as a full glitter coverage goes, this is pretty good. You don't have to do any kind of manipulating the glitters to get them to spread out nice and evenly either. So here's our second coat, and this does cover completely in 2 coats for me. Depending on your application, you may want to go in for a third coat. This is also going to dry down very textured, so you will want 1, maybe 2 coats of a nice, thick, glitter-eating, glossy top coat. And this is also going to be extremely difficult to remove, so you will want a peel-off base coat ahead of time. So there's 2 coats. Moving on to their Halloween trio, we have Unicorn Horn, and this is described as a pastel orange base with intense purple to green to blue to teal shifting shimmer, a rainbow of fantasy iridescent flakies, and a scattering of hollow micro shimmer. Here's our first coat of Unicorn Horn. This is a little bit sheer here on this first coat, but it does cover overall really well for a nice light peachy orange shade. The formula on this is pretty good too. It's a little bit on the thicker side, so you do want to kind of try to work in thinner coats if possible, because otherwise it is going to take a little bit longer to dry and it's going to get a little bit thick on the nail. So here's our second coat, and this does cover completely in 2 coats for me. You will want a nice glossy top coat to give it a nice finish and make everything look cohesive, but it's not for a texture reason, and it also dries a little dull, so for that reason as well. Nothing in here is going to stick to your nails upon removal, so you will be able to remove this, which is normal non-acetone remover if that's what you prefer to use. So there's 2 coats. Next up we have Mermaid Tails, and this is described as a sky blue base with green to red to gold shifting shimmer, orange to pink to gold shifting flakies, and scattered hollow micro shreds. Here's our first coat of Mermaid Tails. This is a little bit sheer here on this first coat as well, but it does cover pretty well here on this first coat. The formula on this is really good. It's not too thick or too thin. There's no running, pooling, staining, anything of that sort. You do get a good amount of these flakies out, and the kind of micro flakies that are in here spread out really, really nicely and make everything look nice and full. So going in for a thicker second coat, this does cover completely. If you worked in thinner coats, you may need to go in for 3. I was having a thick coat kind of day. So the next one will also be a little bit on the thicker side as well. This also dries down a little dull, so you will want a nice glossy top coat, and the removal isn't super duper difficult, but it's not as easy as like a cream or the last polish even. So there's 2 coats. And lastly from the trio we have Dragon Scales, and this is described as an indigo to deep teal thermal with green to teal to blue to purple to copper, ultra chrome chameleon flakies, and micro hollow flakies. Here's our first coat of Dragon Scales. This one's a little bit sheer here on this first coat as well, but it does cover pretty nicely. The formula on this is a little bit on the thinner side, so if you work in super thick coats, you may experience some running or pooling. I am not using a base coat though, so that would possibly hinder the idea of running down the side of your nails. This is completely opaque in 2 coats for me, but again, I was having a little bit of a thick application day, so if you go in for super thin coats, you may opt to go in for a third. This one also dries down dull and a little bit textured, so you will want a nice glossy top coat for those 2 reasons. Removal on this isn't super duper difficult. You may have a couple things left behind that you'll want to buff off your nails, but it's nothing like a pure micro glitter as far as removal goes. So there's 2 coats. Here is the cold state, the warm state, and then a side-by-side. And then moving on to the LynB Loves Customs Quad, we have Chromatic Crustacean, and this is described as an aqua base with copper to green to blue to orange color shifting flakies and red to purple to gold shifting shimmer. Here's our first coat of Chromatic Crustacean, and I am back to normal thickness of coats. So this is very sheer here in this first coat. It is one that's going to have to be built up. It is in a super light base, so that's to sort of be expected. There's a lot going on in this polish though that will be super noticeable once it is built up. So here's our second coat, and this is starting to get very close to coverage on 2 coats. Depending on how picky you are, 2 coats might be just fine for you, but I could still clearly make my nail line out, so I am going to go in for a 3rd coat. The formula on this though is really good. It's not too thick or too thin, and those iridescent flakies stand out actually surprisingly beautifully against a super light base. So here's our 3rd coat, and this one does cover completely in 3 coats for me. You will want a nice glossy top coat for this one as well because it does dry down pretty dull, or a matte top coat to help those iridescent flakies stand out to their full potential. Nothing in here is going to be difficult to remove, and nothing in here dries super textured either. So there is 3 coats. Next up we have Iridescent Shart, and this is described as an intense royal blue base with purple to blue iridescent flakies and a violet glow. Here is our first coat of Iridescent Shart. This is very sheer here on this first coat. It is another one that's going to have to be built up. The formula on this is pretty good, not too thick or too thin, no running or pulling. I feel like if you did a super thick coat you might have a little bit of an issue with that, but I personally didn't experience it. So here's our second coat, and this one's starting to build up in 2, but I am going to go ahead and add a 3rd coat. The flakies that are in here are pretty sparse, and they add an odd-ish texture to the finish of this polish. Something about shimmery polishes combined with flakies are not personally my cup of tea, but if this one is kind of your cup of tea, this is a very nice polish. So this does cover completely in 3 coats for me. You will want a glossy top coat to smooth everything out because it does dry a little bit on the textured side and because it dries a little bit on the dull side as well. Nothing in here was hard to remove either. So there is 3 coats. Up next we have Celestial Aura, and this is described as a lavender base with teal to blue to pink to purple to copper, ultra chrome chameleon flakies, blue shimmer, and a touch of hollow sparkles. Here is our first coat of Celestial Aura. This has a really good formula and pretty good coverage here on this first coat. I can still make on my nail line, so I am going to go in for a 2nd coat, but I do think LynB Designs has this formula down to like a T, absolute perfection. She does this formula quite regularly. This does cover completely in 2 coats for me. It's going to dry down dull, so you will want a nice glossy top coat or a matte top coat because that'll help the flakies stand out to their full potential. Nothing in here is going to be super difficult to remove. You just don't want to reuse the same cotton ball for like all 10 nails. So there's 2 coats. And lastly for today we have Rosy Sunset, and this is described as a juicy bright pink base filled with blue to purple to red to gold ultra chrome chameleon flakies, a hint of a blue glow, and gold galaxy hollow. And here's our first coat of Rosy Sunset. This is a little bit sheer here on this first coat. This is another one that's going to have to be built up to be completely opaque. Because there's so much happening in here, the base of this has to be a little bit more on the sheer side so you don't lose all of those added elements in a super opaque base. Here's our second coat, and this is starting to build up in 2 coats, and if you weren't super picky, you could probably get away with 2 coats, but I am going in pretty thin, so I am going to go ahead and build it up with a 3rd coat. The formula on this is really good. You don't have to do any kind of manipulation to spread everything out evenly on the nail either. Here's our 3rd coat, and this does cover for me completely in 3 coats, and that 3rd coat also deepens the color up quite tremendously. This one is going to dry very dull and very textured, so you will want a nice glossy top coat and a peel off base coat ahead of time if you remember, because this one does have some sticking to the nail property upon removing. So there is 3 coats. So from the LynB Loves Customs collection, Rosy Sunset is my favorite. The flakies in here are beautiful. I love it in the jelly base. It's something different from what LynB does on a regular basis. She tends to do the creams with the flakies, and I love the jelly with the flakies. And then from the Halloween trio, Dragon Scales is my favorite. I love the thermal effect in this, and the flakies stand out really, really beautiful against that, so these 2 are my favorites. And that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of this collections. Let me know if you plan on picking anything up, and let me know what your favorites were. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you'd like to see more from me, and I will talk to you again next time.